The storm had already swallowed the highway by the time she reached the small town. Thunder rolled like an angry beast overhead, shaking the ground beneath her feet as she stumbled toward the only building with lights still on, the biker bar with the rusted sign that read Iron Howl. The neon wolf painted on the door flickered erratically, splashing blue light across the wet pavement. Every instinct told her this was the last place a woman in her condition should walk into, but she had no choice. Her breath came uneven, one hand braced under her belly, the other gripping the doorknob so tightly her knuckles turned white. She could hear roaring laughter from inside, men shouting over music, bottles crashing together. She wasn't sure if it was courage or desperation that pushed her to pull the door open. Everything stopped the instant she crossed the threshold. A dozen leather-clad heads turned in unison. The jukebox rattled through the last seconds of a rock song before dying out in a distorted hum. The air smelled of oil, smoke, and the sharp bite of whiskey. A pool cue froze mid-swing. Someone's cigarette dangled forgotten between two fingers. She stood dripping rainwater onto the wooden floor, feeling hundreds of eyes on her despite there being only 20 men. Her dress clung to her body, outlining her very pregnant shape, and a shiver ran through her from both cold and fear. She swallowed hard, her throat burning, and tried to form words, but only a thin, broken sound came out. The bartender, a scar-faced woman polishing a glass, narrowed her eyes. "You lost, sweetheart." Her tone was rough but not unkind. The woman shook her head, her wet hair sticking to her cheeks. "No. Her voice cracked. She tried again. "I need help." The bikers shifted, exchanging looks. Some skeptical, some alarmed, some irritated at the interruption. But there was something about her trembling hands, the panic in her eyes, that cut through the roughness of the room. Lightning flashed through the windows, illuminating the uncertainty on her face. One of the bikers muttered, "Hell's going on." Another whispered, "She looks like she's been chased." But she just stood there, breath trembling, eyes pleading with strangers she never imagined she would turn to. And the whole bar waited, silent, tense, for her next word. Rocco's chair scraped across the wooden floor with a slow, deliberate sound that cut through the silence like a blade. He was a mountain of a man. Broad shoulders, arms covered in inked skulls and wings, a jaw lined with the kind of stubble that looked like it could sand wood. His leather vest bore the emblem of the Iron Howl pack, a wolf's head howling into flames. When he stood, even the toughest men in the room instinctively straightened. The woman's breath hitched. For a moment, she thought she had walked into a worse nightmare than the one she had fled. But Rocco didn't bark, curse, or shove her out. Instead, he lowered his voice to a gentleness that seemed wrong coming from someone who looked like he bench-pressed motorcycles. "What happened?" he asked, expression steady but eyes sharp. "You hurt somebody after you." She opened her mouth, but emotion clogged her throat. Only when he stepped closer, stopping a respectful distance away, did she finally manage to speak. My car. It broke down a mile up the road." She wiped rain from her forehead with trembling fingers. "And a truck pulled up behind me. I thought he was stopping to help but he wasn't." Her voice cracked on the last word. A ripple passed through the men. Shoulders squared. Boots shifted. The air gained weight. "What do you mean, wasn't?" asked a bearded biker near the pool table, his tone suddenly dark. "He got out and started banging on my window. Shouting things." She pressed a hand over her belly, as if shielding the baby from the memory. "When I locked the doors, he tried to force them open. I ran when he slipped. I don't even know if he chased me, I just ran." Rocco's jaw tightened. "Did you see him follow you here?" She nodded weakly. I think he did. I heard an engine behind me when I reached town." The room shifted instantly. Someone flicked a switch, cutting the blinding neon. Another closed the window blinds. 3 bikers slid off their stools and reached inside their jackets, not for weapons visible, but enough to show they were ready. The bartender muttered, "Not on our turf." Rocco glanced at his men, giving a single, silent nod. Half the pack vanished through the back door, their boots pounding against the wet ground outside. The rest formed a loose circle around the woman, not trapping, but protecting her. She sagged into a chair someone pulled up for her, shaking so hard the cup of hot tea pressed into her hands rattled. For the first time since the storm began, she didn't feel alone. And every biker in the room was waiting for the moment the threat dared show itself. Minutes crawled by like hours. The storm outside rattled the windows until they vibrated, thunder rolling through the earth as if warning that something, or someone, was approaching. Inside the bar, everything had shifted. What had been a rowdy, noisy night was now a silent battlefield waiting for an enemy to step into view. The woman cupped the steaming tea with both hands, though her fingers trembled too much for her to drink. The warmth seeped into her palms, grounding her, but her eyes kept darting toward the door. Every sound outside, the wind slamming a loose sign, a motorcycle engine revving in the distance, the drip of rain, made her flinch. Rocco stood near the entrance, shoulders squared, arms crossed over his chest like a human barricade. The rest of the pack filled the room strategically, some near windows, some near the back door, others pretending to be relaxed but clearly ready to pounce at the slightest wrong move. "Breathe," the bartender murmured, setting a hand on the woman's shoulder. "You're safe here, safe." The word felt foreign. Lightning flashed again, more violent this time, lighting up the entire bar in a harsh white glow. In the few seconds of brightness, the woman glimpsed the outline of the bikers, silent, watchful, dangerous in all the right ways. She pulled the blanket someone had tossed over her tighter around her shoulders. Suddenly, a harsh bang slammed against the front door. The woman jerked so hard the tea sloshed over the rim and onto her lap. Her breath lodged in her throat, her eyes wide with terror. The bikers moved as one. Boots thudded on the wooden floor. Pool cues were set down. Jackets shifted. Everyone's attention snapped toward the entrance, their bodies coiled and ready. "Stay seated," Rocco murmured to the woman without turning around. Then he grabbed the handle and pulled the door open. Rain and wind blasted into the bar, and standing right outside was a man, soaked, furious, and panting as if he had sprinted straight from hell. His hair clung to his forehead, and his clothes were streaked with mud. One look at him and the woman felt her entire body seize. "That's him," she whispered, voice barely audible. The man pointed inside, jaw clenched, eyes wild. "She ran off with my..." He didn't get to finish because Rocco stepped forward, towering over him, forcing him back with nothing more than his presence. The man swallowed hard, but anger kept his mouth running. "She belongs with me. You have no right to keep her here." A growl rippled through the bar. Several bikers cracked their knuckles. One leaned forward, voice low, "You sure you wanna finish that sentence, buddy?" But the man didn't step away. His eyes flicked past Rocco, searching for her, and when he spotted her sitting inside, crying silently, something twisted in his expression, obsession, not concern. Rocco caught the look. His voice, when he spoke, was cold steel. "Say whatever you came to say, but understand this, every word could determine whether you walk away." The man finally hesitated, rain dripping from his clenched fists as the storm raged behind him, and the tension inside the bar tightened like a noose. The room waited. The woman held her breath. And the true confrontation had only just begun. The man's moment of hesitation didn't last long. His rage flared again, overtaking whatever common sense he had left. He stepped forward, trying to shove past Rocco as if the biker were nothing more than a doorframe. He didn't make it even half a step. Rocco's hand shot out, gripping the man's jacket at the collar and stopping him cold. "I wouldn't," he said, his tone so calm it was terrifying. The other bikers tightened their circle behind him, their boots echoing across the floor as they stepped forward, slow, deliberate, and unified. The man's bravado faltered. You don't understand," he stammered, glancing around at the wall of leather and muscle. "She belongs with me. She's mine." The word mine was the final straw. A deep, collective growl rose from the men in the room like a warning from a pack of wolves. Even the bartender slammed her towel onto the counter. "She's a person," she snapped. "Not property." Rocco leaned forward, his face inches from the intruders. "She doesn't belong to anyone. And sure as hell not to someone who chases a pregnant woman down a highway in a storm." His voice hardened. "Now get back before you regret where you're standing." The man tried to puff himself up, but his eyes kept darting from biker to biker. He didn't see any sympathy. No doubt. No hesitation. These weren't men who bluffed. "You can't keep her here," he said weakly. "We're not keeping her," Rocco replied. "We're protecting her. You, on the other hand, his gaze sharpened like a blade. "Should start running." The man opened his mouth, but before he could argue, several bikers stepped outside, forming a semicircle that blocked any escape except the direction he came from. Their presence alone was enough. Massive silhouettes against the storm, rain glistening on their jackets, the growl of motorcycles revving like predators awakening. The man's face paled. He backed up. 1 step, 2, 3. Then he finally turned and bolted into the rain, slipping in the mud before scrambling to his feet and running down the street, disappearing into the roaring darkness. The moment he was out of sight, the bikers relaxed, not completely, but enough to breathe again. Rocco closed the door, locking it with a firm click. The woman burst into silent tears, shoulders shaking with the release of fear she'd been holding inside since the storm began. Rocco approached her carefully, crouching so he was eye level. "You're safe now," he said quietly. "We'll make sure you get home when the weather clears." One of the younger bikers, surprisingly gentle despite tattoos crawling up his neck, held her coat out for her. Another grabbed a dry blanket. The bartender made her another cup of tea, sliding it into her hands with a nod that carried more comfort than words. Outside, thunder still rumbled, but inside, the room felt solid, anchored, protected. Later, the men would joke about the lunatic who tried to storm Iron Howl. But deep down, each one knew they'd done something important that night. They hadn't just scared off a threat, they'd given a frightened woman the one thing she desperately needed. A place where even the wildest, roughest men had her back.